We're all set?
Yeah.
All right, it is 6:34. We are ready to begin. Going around the room, we have Patrick Knight running everything that makes it happen. Mike Roth is here, Craig Schulte, Aaron Carlson, Ben Peters, myself, Michael Gary, Kim Dunsmore, and our city attorney, Chris Hood. And no one else in the audience. And we do have an audience this evening. So we'll start off with open forum. Is anyone here for the open forum at all, or is everyone on the agenda already?
All right.
No one's like jumping out of their chairs, so I'll assume it's open forum. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Anything on the general agenda that needs to be added for this evening? Anyone? Changes? Okay. Everyone have a chance to look at the bills? You good there?
That's the best part.
Quiet nod, yes. And then we have two items, a parade permit and gambling permit for the Lions Club Fishermans Picnic. Anything else? All right, would anyone like to make a motion on the consent agenda?
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Any more conversation? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's a total on that, so we're good there. First up, we're only a minute behind now. Planning Commission, we have two items. So
That's right.
Crosby Bakery will be first for a conditional use permit. And are they here this evening?
Hello.
There they are, behind the chair. Hi there.
Hi.
Planning Commission
Yeah.
people would like to maybe give us your thoughts first on this one? Or?
Sure. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, really, as we were talking about it, the only, or what they're asking is just to be able to use the second story for actually year-round rental instead of just daily, which in the broader scheme of the city is something we would like to see, but in the downtown, it's something you actually need a permit to do. So that's kind of the issue at hand. The only comment that I read was asking about parking, and there is parking available there, even though it's not actually required. But
They are required to have one off-street,
is that right?
is my understanding,
Okay.
Yep.
And they do.
which they have.
Yeah, I was watching that and the comments about that, and I would agree that 2 spots would really make more sense, knowing how many times I've had friends and family come up here that go into a space that big. There's 2 cars that come along with it pretty commonly. But you mentioned the possibility of more space if need be.
Right. We have space for 4 parking spaces. We of course would like to use 2 of those for the bakery itself. And even in the short-term rental that we're going to be doing, we will be allowing 2 vehicles if need be, because we have a 3-bedroom, which could, it could be used by 2 families or a very large family. So we do have that in mind. So that's parking won't be, there's not going to be any overspill. And more than anything, for a long-term rental, that would be, as my example was last time, if we are lucky enough to get somebody out of culinary school that's looking for a nice job at a bakery and they can't get to Grand Marais because they have no place to stay, we want to have a buffer place that maybe 6 months to a year they could live until they were on their feet, found a place. And our thought here is this gives us that flexibility and that freedom to do that. I have an additional piece of commercial property up next to the mini golf course, which we are also planning to develop long-term housing on for employees in the future, as well as just to try to provide housing in general if we can.
So that'd be great.
All right.
Can I just interject real quick here? Mike, so I thought that you had said, and I should have followed up, that it wasn't required. When we started kind of going off and talking about having more parking spaces required, you interjected and said we don't make that a requirement, but obviously we do. So what did I miss?
The context of that comment, I think,
Yeah.
was about the vacation rental use,
Okay,
and we don't require parking
that's it.
for that commercial use in our downtown zone.
Okay,
But we do require one space per unit for residential uses downtown.
got it. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, now I'm not clear, because I
Sorry.
thought, like, can we use an example of another place, for instance? So I can-
Downtown?
Yeah,
Let's say the Mayhew.
thank you.
Is that a good example?
That's a perfect one, then I won't be so confused.
They did not have to provide off-street parking in order to use the property that way. They chose to provide off-street parking for business purposes. So in our downtown zone, we don't require most commercial uses to provide any off-street parking, but we do require large hotels and residential uses to provide some off-street parking.
There we go.
Okay, so that's confusing. Thank you. That was
Okay.
super helpful. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I would love to make a motion to
Okay.
approve this conditional use permit for the Crosby Bakery.
Okay.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Questions? No? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? I think I heard a unanimous.
It was, yes,
Okay.
unanimity on that one.
All righty, very good.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Oh,
I would like to give each one of you, I'm curious about the aesthetics.
okay.
Wait, these are all gift certificates. I have to pay for baked goods
I'm just
myself. How the wife operates, which is smart. So this is what we are
Oh, okay.
Okay,
trying
thank
to
you.
make it look like.
So cute.
Three-dimensional.
You get a better
Oh,
view.
okay, yeah, I got it.
I know you don't need that, didn't ask for it, but I thought, why
You
not?
got it, and kind of nice. All right. Yeah, it looks like there's some, okay, that's like outside seating that creates that space then, between that and Severson's well, is that
Yeah,
what?
yeah, I've been talking with Jen, and she's pretty excited to try to get a, I said we'd hunt down grant money for a nice mural against her wall, and she was a little embarrassed about not having it as pretty as it could be. And I said, we'll happily take care of it.
We'll prettify it.
So, yeah, she's very excited, and
Nice.
we are as well.
Great.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you also for putting me in the first part of the agenda. Diaper duty and a few more things to do.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep, thank you,
Thank
Tom.
y'all.
Okay. All right, next up, conditional use permit for PNR Development LLC and the HRA. Once again,
Yeah,
You
well, you
picked
probably
this up?
read the comments in there, and maybe, Jason, did you already contact everybody on the? Okay. We had made 3 conditions in there, you saw that? One of them that, yes, Jason.
Do you mind if we?
Yeah, why don't you approach and you can kind of explain that piece, but I'll just kind of sketch it and then you fill in. So we had 3 requirements that we had talked about, one of which was water, one was traffic, and one was having to come back to get another permit for the second structure, because we wanted to see, well, how does this one go? Again, related to, I think that one especially, and Ben was one who spearheaded that, was related to traffic, because we'd like to know that we're doing right by the city and the community and make sure that that's all running square. But then, and then the water, it's really beyond us. We just kind of wanted to know, like, yes, this is happening and all those ducks are in a row. But then the third piece is the traffic piece, and Jason's going to speak to that here now, unless you want to do something else. Mayor.
yeah.
Hi, Council.
Hi, Jason.
Jason Hale, Executive Director of the HRA. This is Dante Tomasoni. He is the COO of PNR Properties and Development. So just quick, I had talked with the planning commissioners who were involved with obviously the CUP, and I wanted to update them on just some conversation that I have had with the county subsequent to last week's meeting, as well as conversation with Administrator Roth. And just a quick update on the CUP language about the county approval. I believe the administrator has some particular recommended language, but the gist of it was there was just some confusion between what the planning commission can require of the county in a CUP, and in this case it is that the developer and the HRA get that approval from the county engineer. So just after we had a conversation with them, we thought we should wordsmith that a little bit, because we don't want to impose something that we technically can't require them to do. You can require us to do it, but we want to make sure they're a participant in the conversation. So for that reason, Mike has drafted some alternate language that he can happily share if you want to now.
I would love to if you're interested. And in particular, I think the two issues that came up in our conversations with the county were what's the scope of work that we might expect them to actually perform, and that's, we wouldn't require them to go do a study on our behalf, for instance. We would ask them to help us figure out what's the best way to deal with this issue. And then also, what's the actual input we might expect from the county as well. We're not asking them to tell you whether or not this is a good idea or whether or not you should build an apartment building, but rather to provide us with information about the traffic issue. So what we have written in here is a little bit different than the draft that was presented. We actually made changes to all the conditions, but the traffic one reads, the applicant will provide a traffic plan reviewed by the county highway engineer and city engineer. So I also had a conversation with LHB about how that might go, and they were comfortable. They think that the type of information that they would expect to see is pretty readily available, and they're comfortable looking through that issue and happy to work with the county engineer and figure out what to do with this. So that is different than we had written, where we're asking the county engineer to approve a traffic safety plan, which we don't really know. These are all, there's not a scope of work written into this, right? We're just trying to address a community concern that was raised at a hearing and get you some professional prepared information that approaches that.
So does that mean some suggested solutions to make it safer, or just understanding the traffic patterns that we would expect to see through there? And what will be the end result? That what would a person get back from this then?
I think just an understanding of what's going on and what effect the development might have on that is what you should expect.
Okay.
And then if that indicates some problems, then we might delve deeper and look at solutions as well.
Okay.
But I don't know that we can really understand that until we've seen.
I think that's what the public expects, is some potential solutions. I think there's already a big perception that there's potentially issues, though you're right, we got to really nail that down, what it is, but that feeling is already there. What they really want out of that is, what are some things we could do to mitigate that?
And I think that was part of some of the conversations I had with both the county engineer and the city engineer, that it's almost two separate conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Are there safety issues in the existing intersection, and what effect does this development have on the existing intersection, are two different conversations. And they both probably need to continue, but they're not necessarily both part of this conversation. So until we've had a chance to look at a study that looks at what effect the development has on that intersection, we can't really say that it's contributing to safety considerations there.
No.
And we might need to just keep working with the county and some of our other local organizations on safety concerns in that area, regardless of this conversation.
So how do you feel about that condition now moving forward for P&R? What does this do for timelines for them? Was there conversation about expectations about when something like this might be looked at, or I mean, it's gonna be contingent on, as it sits now, right? I mean, it's, they have to complete that before you issue the permit, right?
Before we would issue a land use permit.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I have any concerns about timing.
Okay.
It's really their schedule that's,
sure.
that's more of a concern, and in speaking with the city engineer anyway, he thinks that it would take maybe a week to turn around comments on a well-prepared traffic study, and so if they're able to produce one quickly, it should be easy for us to get that all taken care of
Okay.
still in May.
Okay.
And
Does that, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to follow on, and you know, knowing that, does that present a problem for you all?
Well, I'll speak for the HRA, and
Sure.
correct me, Dante, if I'm misspeaking here. From our conversations and what Administrator just said, if we can get the study done and sent to the city, and the city has time to get it to first the city engineer, and then of course the county engineer. If we can do that before the the next couple weeks here, I don't think that will be problematic. We're still waiting on the wetland delineation, but that's really the go or no go sort of moment. So we have a couple of weeks there. We think we can get that buttoned up. That we can work with that. The larger concern is if we continue to to push that back further and further, then the construction. Well, as you know, the construction season gets shorter and
Yeah.
shorter. And we have other things with grant monies and things that we're trying to manage at the same time. So I think we should be okay if we can adhere to that schedule more or less. Is that
What he said.
Very good.
In terms of the other two conditions, the stormwater management plan one wasn't very specific in terms of timing or what our conditions really mean, and we don't have a local stormwater ordinance. They're already preparing a stormwater management plan, as they indicated at the hearing, and really they have to because of the size of the development, because of MPCA requirements. And so what this condition says is the applicant will provide a stormwater management plan meeting MPCA requirements to the city administrator prior to approval of any land use permit, which is what was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
And then
Fair
the last one was just a little more detail about if they want to do more development, which was also one of the conversations. And it says additional development on the legally described property other than the development plan authorized in this conditional use permit shall require an additional conditional use permit approved by the city. So I think that is what we said at the
It is.
meeting, but it's
It
just,
is.
a little more specific.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the intent, right, Ben? That was
I
the
think it
intent.
is, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We just
Yep.
throw stuff out there and you clean it up.
With a lot of help.
Well, very good. You got good
Takes a
helpers.
village.
I still have a question because I have been asked this and I thought I knew the answer.
Okay.
But these two buildings are a total of 51?
No,
No.
Mayor, that's one building is 51, and I know it was a little confusing in the original CUP, and I apologize for that. We wanted to show if a second phase were to occur, because the developer will have an option on that, it would be a mirror and it would look like that. We wanted to show like where it would be on the site. Of course, we have to get the wetland delineation, but the first building is just
Okay.
one 51 unit building. So it's
Okay.
51 and then potentially another mirror of that.
I remember you talking about the second, but then when you said future, then I still was thinking, oh, did you mean that was the second one?
Oh, sorry for the confusion on that.
So now for those certain people who asked me that question earlier this week,
Hopefully that
we
is
have
resolved.
better clarity. We'll be having another locker room discussion at the Y. Okay. Anyone like to make a motion on this?
Yeah. Yes. I would move to approve it pending the, I guess we're going to wait on the traffic report or whatever.
The way that it's written is, the condition is that they'll have one and it'll be reviewed by the city engineer and the county engineer.
Okay.
So it's not,
So I
you're
can-
approving this resolution and it includes that condition.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay.
Even easier. All right, then I move to approve resolution 2023-09, PNR Cook County HRA apartment.
Second?
I'll second.
Any other questions? Craig, did you have anything?
No, not at this time. I'm sure we'll have more
Okay.
prior
Ben?
to.
No, I have no
Okay.
questions.
I'm concerned about a lot of things, but they're going to be coming later.
Okay. All right.
Well, if you're concerned about some things, I mean, we can talk about those.
Yeah, well, I'm just concerned, moving forward in the project, I guess my concern is probably out there further than where we are here, obviously, but operation of the rental units and how they're gonna be managed and, you know, that type of thing. A sinking fund for, maintenance of the building, those types of things. I don't wanna, I'd hate to see this project run into issues like that 15 to 18 years down the road, because we've all seen that happen,
You and me both, Counselor.
you know? And that's the point that I don't, you know, I know we're all in a hurry to get housing, but we also need to tread carefully and make sure it's done right for the betterment of everybody, including the renters, you know,
Yeah.
that use the building. Those are some of the questions I have, is basically the management of the structure,
Operations.
the operations, yeah.
I'll speak to one thing quick, and then if you don't mind, Counselor, I'll turn it over to Dante, because he's gonna be
Okay.
the one that's doing all that. I know that generally I've had a few questions about that, as you can imagine, particularly in light of some of the challenges with the Birchwood apartments in town. And I just want to draw a very clear distinction. That is a USDA rural development property, and there's actually a national issue with that program, those properties having deferred maintenance and having bad management. Like it's a question of the capital that the capital's dealing with. It's a national issue right now, especially ones that were built around the time, the 70s and 80s, and even the 90s when this one was built. So that, I just want to make sure it's clear, that's a failure of that. Oh, I want to speak carefully with my funding partners here at the federal level. That is a complication of the funding programs that were built back then. And they structure with that program, like they can only make, for example, they can only make so much profit as an operator of that building. So the incentive structures are pretty interesting, I'll put that. That's very different from a privately operated, owned and maintained property like this, because they don't have to contend with a litany, and they had Minnesota Housing Funds and LIHTC funds and Rural Housing Development Funds in that program, so in that building. So I just want to make that even publicly and understand, like there are different buckets of housing products, and from what I've been told from my state and federal partners, this is one of the most complicated structures you can do. Period, because of where it is, because of how it's funded, et cetera. So that's a very different situation than what we're talking about here. The funding is completely different. So I just want to clear that up, and then I can turn it to you for any concerns you can mitigate for the management side of things.
Either way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor. So P&R companies, we have 800 units under management right now. We are one of the few companies in the Northland that develop, construct, and manage our own properties. Right now, our primary plan is to manage it ourselves for the life of the property. So it'll be under private management. Every possible reason to maintain the property is there on a private ownership scale. So we plan to hire locally as much as we can to help run the structure, whether it's turnover of units, hire contractors, somebody to find an issue if there's a plumbing thing that goes wrong. We want somebody here on the ground doing that while working with us back in Duluth, and we'll be making trips up here whenever we can. If we have issues hiring, we have some local partners that we're going to work with and potentially hire an agency to manage that for the life of the property. And we hold almost all of our properties. We haven't sold a single property to this day. And in 20, 30, 40 years, we've only been around for 10. So, but our goal is to maintain our reputation of impeccable care for our properties as long as we're here. So,
Thank you.
Is that
Yeah,
anything
that's
else?
great. I'm glad that we,
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
appreciate you bringing that up. I think it's worth clarifying. This is potentially the last time this conversation occurs at the city council. So if there are concerns, this is the time to talk about them.
Yeah. Craig, are you satisfied?
yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay.
I just, one thing that concerns me, and maybe it doesn't apply to this project, but a lot of other federally funded, state funded, and whenever you're mixing buckets of money with all kinds of things, there's always money up front to get these things going. And then once they're in place and built and running, it's like, it seems to be, you forget about it, you know? And then all of a sudden, it's like, hey, we need to do this, we need to do that, and then, well, that money's not available anymore for this, it's not available for that anymore. So my concern is that it's a, you know, it's gonna be a very visible project to the people of this community and the people who visit this community. That's one concern, is the location. It's very visible, and so the impact, you know, to be nice and to be, you know, appealing and successful, it's going to show a light on the community. Hopefully, it's a bright light. That's kind of how I'm looking at it, you know, looking into the future.
Except for the parking lights.
Well, the parking,
And that's all right.
right.
Targeted.
Well,
Sorry.
yeah. A lot of downlighting. And make sure the lights on the moose of the water tank are, you know, people can see that when they go around the corner. Yeah.
Watch out for
So,
those.
yeah. Thank you for that.
That's a good question. Thank you.
Bill.
Yeah.
All set?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Aaron? No?
My questions were answered, so.
Okay. All right. All in favor of resolution, what is, 2023-09?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that was unanimous. Well, look at that. Second.
Six votes
We
this
got
time.
an- yeah, we got an extra one.
He doesn't need a gavel.
All right, well, very good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
You're off and running.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. All right, now we're up to driveways. Sweetwater design.
All right.
We're downscaling here a little bit on project size.
I'm okay with that.
Hey, Molly, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Molly Larson. I own a graphic and web design business in town, and this is my husband, Bill Larson.
Bill?
Hi.
Okay, I guess this didn't come before, you guys know.
No.
This is something that the council's done from time to time when we have an undeveloped right-of-way and someone wants to use it for private-ish purposes. We have this tool, which is a license that allows them to make improvements that they're going to use, in this case, for a driveway, and then the terms and conditions associated with their use of that property, which is still public property, their responsibilities, which are pretty much all of it, and then what happens if we need the property back for public purposes. We also included their stormwater management plan, just so you could see. If you go to the page that shows, say, their entire development, you'll see one driveway heading north on the left side of the paper. That one's on their property. And then there's one driveway that heads east on the right side of the paper. And as it crosses a line, it's heading into an existing street right-of-way that's undeveloped and unlikely to be developed, because it dead ends on the county's maintenance property and it ends up at the village ditch. So this is a fine location to use a tool like this where they can develop it for their own business purposes, and we're using the right of way at least in some way. We're still trying to dial in Exhibit A, which clearly shows that section of the driveway that's included in the stormwater management plan in a way that somebody that is not involved in the project like we are can understand, say, 5 or 10 years from now. So there's a couple more details that we'll want to add to Exhibit A, but if you all understand what we're talking about, then I'd say let's push forward and
With the newer pictures, I think I finally got it for sure. So it's that northeast kind of angle up. Okay, so I kind of thought.
Yeah.
So is it going to end up, no, it won't. It'll be just past, it'll be east of the road coming down, right? Is that the right
From
direction?
Cedar Lane,
On the business park?
Cedar Grove
Yeah.
Lane, or- yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be just a little bit off from that.
You're
Okay.
on the south side of the gun plant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just down a little ways. Okay.
Well,
Any questions?
I don't, seems like a good use.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're gonna start construction soon?
That's the hope, yeah, this year, yeah.
Great. That's awesome.
Um,
Well, I'd make a motion to approve the license
Anyone
for
want-
Sweetwater Design.
Would anyone like to second that?
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions?
Seems like a good
Straightforward.
plan.
Every little details within that rather extensive contract.
Yeah. It was really interesting. I mean, kind of interesting. It was complicated.
I mean, this one's only 10 pages long. Wait till we get to the next one.
Yeah, that was
a good
the.
read.
That one hurt.
All right, so with that said, all in favor of licensing for the driveway?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
No, nothing from the phone. All right, and with that, you are all
guys.
set.
Thank
We
you.
passed
Yeah.
that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Can't wait to see it.
Yeah?
Me too. Or-
Okay, now we are on to. Oh,
Community.
Contract.
the community connector.
Right.
Yeehaw.
There was a contract, is right.
Oh, my.
Now, the park board has looked at this in great detail. We've already approved the main piece of this, right? And
Yeah, the project is a go. You've selected your contractor based on bids. We know what the scope of work is. This is the next step, which is to actually sign a contract with them that talks about all of the requirements. And as you can see, there's quite a few of them. And this is typical when we do a large infrastructure project. Sometimes the contract can be hundreds of pages, and it's developed by our engineers for the most part. You know, they've got lots and lots and lots of terms and conditions, and customized then for each project so that it includes the specifications that are relevant to that project. In this case, we've also had the city engineer review this. We actually got a lot of that review done a year ago when we first bid this project, but this one's ready to go, and we'd ask for your approval.
Great.
I just had a couple questions. I saw in the contract, the end date was basically at Fisherman's Picnic. When do they envision starting work on this? Do we know?
Soon, like potentially weeks.
Certainly. And will they really be there till then, or is that like giving themselves some cushion?
I think that's giving them some cushion. And it's not that big of an area that they're working in. So, also just in terms of its disruptiveness to the surroundings, we think that most of the staging can occur on the existing park property, and in particular like the old bike trail section down there. We don't intend to necessarily have to impact the highway at all, except for maybe on some limited circumstances. And it shouldn't have to impact the park operations either, although it may be very interesting for our campers to watch what's going on.
Right.
So do they
Now-
come in through the park and drive around kind of by the marina?
They'd have to
and up there?
access from the,
Yeah, they may walk in from on the old bike trail. That might be the best way to get to the site,
Yeah.
because otherwise you've got to deal with the creek and the bridge.
Right. And didn't we already see a map of this? Of that, like, or a picture of like where they were gonna be doing the work, didn't we already?
Yeah, we had
And we saw like where they're potentially gonna be sited,
what we set aside for staging area for,
Okay, yeah.
for equipment and materials.
because it wasn't in here, right? I didn't see.
No, that's, it's not contracted. I mean, it's our property. They can't use it without our permission, so.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Okay. Did you have anything, Craig, since you're on
Yeah.
the park board, anything to add on this, or?
when are they starting the Gunfa Trail? 5th? I mean, I know this is on the other side, but
Yeah,
they're
So-
gonna kind of be going,
Are you gonna give us that fuller,
Along
better,
with
I
each
missed the
other.
meeting? A bigger
Yeah.
update?
we had a
when you get all
pre-construction
done?
meeting this morning. I'll give you a summary of that. That could be as soon as 2 weeks from now.
pretty soon, yeah.
And that one also isn't going to impact Highway 61.
Right.
So, although they're both close to each other and, you know, close to the highway, they shouldn't really have any impact on it.
Alright.
Make a motion to approve the community connector construction contract.
Ooh, 4 Cs. I like that.
I'll second it.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. We're good with that. All right, council and staff reports. So why don't we start with you, Mike, an update then on that Fifth Street project? I see they put up the road signs went up the other day. And
They
then
did.
also if there's anything to update about Chris Skildum's project, if that's changed again.
Yeah, I
But
met with him this
it's-
morning too. I can give some updates on that. The county's Fifth Avenue reconstruction. First of all, what's most pertinent to us is Ellers is scheduled to be at the next city council meeting to talk about the money we're going to need to borrow to pay for the utility portions of the project, which are close to $1.8 million. And so that's a lot of money, but as I told Ben earlier today, thankfully that's not the largest project we've ever done, like all of the other projects we seem to be talking about these days are. And we've been planning for it for some time, so we know how it's going to fit in the budget, although it's a larger number than we started with. The construction team is talking about potentially starting work on May 22nd. And so that's coming up a couple weeks from now. And the earlier work will be at the lower portion of the road and starting on utility stuff. So in the next week or two, we'll be getting the word out as much as possible to the affected folks about what they should expect and what they should be prepared for. There is a temporary water system that needs to be constructed so that while the water mains are being worked on, that we can still provide service to a lot of the folks that are around there. And so that's a little strange, where somebody walks into your yard with a piece of black pipe that's going, you know, on top of the ground and connects it to your hose bib, and that's actually taking the place of the existing underground water mains. Works great though. It should be a relatively brief disruption of service. Like we'll have that up and running, and we'll be putting just sort of general information out to folks about what's happening, and then affected properties will get more specific information actually on their door. The entirety of Fifth Avenue is going to be closed for the project. That means to through traffic. There will be access for some local traffic while that section's not being actively worked on. So while they're digging holes for utilities, that's, you know, there's no traffic allowed there. But if they just remove the blacktop and it's dirt, there's still access for local businesses and residences whose driveways are accessed off of Fifth Avenue. And there should only be limited interruptions for them. A lot of partners were in the pre-construction meeting, so all the local utilities that are affected by it were there, the contractors and their crews, and the folks that are going to be here on site, as well as the superintendents, the county and their crews, and who's going to be doing their supervision, plus they're actually hiring out additional assistants to do the construction administration on site. They're planning on having a construction trailer set up at the courthouse's auxiliary parking lot on the west side of Fifth Avenue, and that will be a hub for information, so folks will actually be able to find information on the project at that construction trailer. Folks can also just contact the Jacob Bakers, the county's representative who's going to be doing the construction administration on our behalf, and can ask him any questions that they have about it as well. And we're happy at City Hall to also take questions and get them to the folks that know what's going on. The project will take the whole season. And so some of the things we talked about are, well, what events are occurring this summer that we might potentially want to know, what's going to be going on construction-wise. First thing is the Le Grand du Nord bike race that's happening the Memorial Day weekend. That really the only interaction with that is the intersection of Fifth Avenue and County Road 7, which they won't be actively working on while the bike race is going on. So after that, We've got the Art Festival, who is potentially going to be using the county's auxiliary parking lot for some of their vendor parking, and so they still have some details to work out on that, but it's in progress. And the Fisherman's Picnic, of course, will happen while this project is still going on as well. That shouldn't have any effect on what they're doing, but other than there's 5 blocks of on-street parking that are not available. So, big project. It's going to be a lot, but we're kind of used to that now in town. We know what that looks like, so we should be able to get through, and it'll be a great product when it's done.
This might be maybe more detailed than to ask you, but did they say when they are, let's say, on the lower part of 5th by 61, do they haul out there, or do they still haul up? Which way do they head if they're taking materials out in a way, big trucks?
They didn't say. I'm sure they have haul routes that are approved as part of the plan, so we can find that out and get that information to you. I think the sites that they're going to are all up the Gunflint Trail, so my expectation is they're going to go up, but I can check on that.
I think 8th Avenue is going to be part of it.
8th Avenue and Broadway are both getting a bunch of new signs because they are the detour routes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yippee.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There was also emergency services folks in the meeting today.
Right.
Of course, they're pretty directly affected by this project. The ambulance is often on 5th Avenue as it's going to a good chunk of the county, and so they know and have known for a while this is coming, but they want real specific information about what the schedule looks like and when they have access to what. And so that line of communication is open and will continue. And then our fire department was there as well and said, well, while this temporary water is up, we want to know exactly what's going on with hydrants, which was a great detail to get into as well. So it's the kind of things that there's a million details like that, and there's dozens of folks working on this project, and we'll keep asking and answering questions as they come.
What's the latest with Chris Skildum's project?
Chris and I spoke this morning about his project. I mean, some of you may have received the update on his schedule earlier that he's not anticipating starting right away this summer. He's looking at later in the summer for a start. And he's working on details regarding the security requirements that we have, and I'm expecting to get some information from the bank he's working with for us to look at and review shortly.
So he is still considering doing work on this project this year?
He said potentially September.
Okay.
I actually think there will be work on the site that occurs earlier than that. So the original schedule was that they can't do the final plat until there's some significant survey work done. Like the surveyor has to go out and actually put pins in for a final plat. And well, there was snow all over the place, and so they didn't want to do that yet. Well, we're now getting to the point where they can. So expect to see some work clearing the drive into the property. And then the survey will begin, and while that's happening, there may also be some test boring done as well. So that kind of work I think you can expect to see in the near future. Before the utility work begins and the road construction begins, they'll have to come back with the final plat.
Right.
I've had a few people comment about the conditions of our streets. And one in particular, which I had the joy of driving down, I believe it's 2nd Avenue East, but up from the post office and the Grand Marais State Bank. Is that 2nd East? I'm trying to do this semantically.
Think so,
Broadway
yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Is it Broadway first and then
Maybe second.
2nd?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Going all the way to 7th, or, to,
Yeah.
not 7th, County Road 7? I mean, going all the way north?
Yeah, going north up the street.
Yeah, okay.
Mostly in the middle section there, there's a lot of really bad potholes. Do they just naturally go around and start looking for those and filling them when the time is right?
They do, as a matter of fact. And this year's been tough, and all over. A lot of the state has had really, really tough year when it comes to frost damage. So what we're working on right now is street sweeping. And as it gets warmer and we have access to hot patch materials, then we'll be out pothole filling and we'll be out crack sealing and doing that typical late spring, early summer pavement maintenance.
Great.
Which is all relative when you live here,
Yeah.
spring.
And in between those, there'll be painting.
The good news there is if you lose a feeling, you're close to the dental office.
Oh,
There you go.
very good. Yeah, I like that. Patrick, we talked about this week you showing off those forms and or your searchable ordinances. Is that something you can do this evening or no?
Just a minute here.
Do you
wanna
want to
keep
get
going on
ready and we'll do
updates?
something else?
Yeah.
We'll get you ready. Craig?
Yeah, we had a park board meeting. We had a Zoom meeting with a representative from HKGI, who are in the process of putting together a new Grand Marais Recreation Area Park Master Plan. And the result of that meeting was kind of tentatively setting up a time frame moving forward of when we're going to start having public meetings and getting together the people that we want at those meetings. And I think, well, they schedule in June, July, August to have these, and I think we tentatively scheduled in July 11th for a meeting. So there will be public, there'll be advertising to notify the public when these meetings are going to happen so that people can attend them.
Do you tend to focus on any groups that might be particularly involved?
I don't think I have the list of groups in here, but it's quite an extensive this would be the public engagement process. I don't think they put together the groups yet.
The park board and
But-
HKGI did some brainstorming about stakeholder lists.
Yeah.
Actually, at a previous meeting, and it's extensive.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe that's where I saw the list. It wasn't on this handout that I
Yeah,
got.
it was a meeting before that they did
But it's a
that.
pretty good extensive list of community-wide.
I know the Historical Society has
To
had
keep
some
everybody
questions.
engaged or aware of these meetings so that if they have input and they want to, obviously come and be part of the brainstorming and talking about it. It stems from, the economic part of it, you have the recreational part of it, you have the public health part of it. There's a whole bunch of aspects. It's like citywide participation that they want while they have this public meeting. And I don't know, I think there was more than one public meeting. Was there only one public meeting, or no, there's gonna be more than one?
There'll be quite a few.
There'll be
And-
quite a few,
and
yeah, 'cause then
different
we-
styles too. They've got some
Right.
survey tools they'll be creating.
Yep.
They'll have small group meetings with stakeholders specifically, and they'll
Yep.
also have larger open public
Yeah,
meetings.
and then there'll also be meetings with just the park board too, to give that information back to us.
Yeah.
Then it comes to before the city.
Okay.
So right now, it's kind of a planning stage to get these public meetings set up, the first one anyway. And, yeah.
Anything else?
Having that.
Park board wise or whatever?
Yep. I think that was pretty much the whole agenda for the park board thing, yeah. That's it.
Patrick's ready whenever you want.
Oh, okay. One quick question. PUC wise, are there any updates? Neil said that that the water treatment is going to try that product out.
The sewer, the wastewater treatment plant. Yeah, we've actually
Any update on
been,
that yet, or?
we've been using a product like that for a number of years. And so that we haven't changed that yet. We have also been talking to a couple of different vendors about enhanced, basically injecting more bacteria into parts of the plant where that's how we process the waste. And it's not clear yet whether that is feasible and or a good idea, like money-wise, that it would be effective, but there's some promising thoughts on it. We're still working on it.
Okay, so it's still pretty early in
Yeah.
the thing on that. Okay, all right. Aaron?
Yeah. So I had a meeting with Arrowhead Animal Rescue. We mostly just talked about consistent fundraising that we wanted to do in the future. We're looking towards the future for that. And then also they're going to be at the rummage sale up at the community center on the 19th. So if you want to say hi to everyone there, go there. That's about it for Animal Rescue. And then at Active Living and Steering Committee, there wasn't... The one thing I wanted to shout out was there's going to be a bike rodeo on the 25th, so it'll be a lot of fun.
Nothing. Planning zoning, big meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we had
Jim.
way more people than you.
Yeah.
You did it right.
Meeting.
All right. Michael?
What, me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Planning zone.
Oh, all right,
We've
that's
done
it then. All right, Patrick, then it's your turn.
All right. I guess I'll start with the ordinance, city code update to our presentation of the city code. So we recently, in the last couple of years, did a recodification, which means all of the code is reviewed, and I gotta take these headphones off. I'm hearing myself. It's weird. All the code is reviewed and kind of updated. All the legal language is updated, and any errors are corrected. That's one half of getting the code up to date. The other part is presenting it in this new format, which allows us to streamline codification in the future. That's just going to happen on the fly unless we want to have a lawyer look over the code for legal reasons. Any changes we make are just now live, and we don't have to do the big recodification process. The other cool part of that is it lets us and the public search for what they're looking for and get it pretty immediately. So I'll just show you one of the things I looked up today that I didn't know was leaf burning. I got a question about that. So it takes a second to load. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was before.
Nice.
So there it shows you kind of all the instances of leaf burning and the specific regulations over here that might apply to that. So yeah, between September 15th and December 1st, you can burn leaves as long as there's nothing restricting you for some other reason, weather or things like that. Yeah, so that's that. It's pretty fun to look around. My favorite part is land use, zoning code.
I think we all agree that's everybody's favorite part.
But yeah, this is if you're looking to build or something like that, wondering what you can do with your property, this is a great place to start and get some general ideas. So that's that. That's the code update. And then the other thing we did was get all of our forms to be online, fillable, and submittable. Before, you could fill them out and then print them. Now we're using this Adobe Cloud software to manage them, so you can fill out the form online.
Yeah, you should definitely fill this one out, Patrick.
Yeah. Gotta look at what I'm doing. And then, yeah, type your signature. The cool part about this is legibility for staff and tracking.
Right.
Everybody
And-
thinks they're a doctor.
And And it does also allow, if for some reason I can't imagine that you don't have email when you're doing this, you can print it off and bring it in anyway. So, yeah, all of our forms are now available to be filled out and submitted online. So that's those things. Then the last thing I'll plug here, while I've got everyone's attention, is you can sign up for the weekly update right here on the front page of the website.
Nice.
So that's that.
Perfect.
Nice.
I'll keep selling it. Thanks a lot for all that work. That's nice.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
Should be good. Updates. Just in case anyone didn't catch, the EDA HRA merger was not approved by the county, so that's the end of that conversation for right now. There will be nothing coming our way. I met with Katie and Maria from the Cook County Historical Society. They had presented earlier some material and asked, I think I brought this up once, that there's from the state a group that's surveys and kind of keeps track's not the right word, listing of meaningful, from a historical perspective, properties, like for instance Fort Snelling, and gets the history all the way back in Fort Snelling and keeps that. And then the end result is you have this survey and possibly a designation as a historical district. It's not like being on the historical register. It doesn't say anything about changing of what your property and property rights and what you do with your property. It's really a historical perspective on it. So I read everything they sent, and then we just had a quick conversation to kind of verify those pieces of it. And I said, well, we'd certainly be, sure, we'd love to hear and whatever. He can come and give a presentation, either come here in person or online, whatever, and hear what that involves. Their main interest is the harbor area from Artist Point and around the main part of there, but it's could be the whole city, but the real focus, from what I understand, is really is the harbor. And so we'll look to see where that goes. If, they'll come and give us a presentation. Somewhat related to that, we did have our meeting, Mike put together with all of the East Harbor landowners who are having all the erosion issues. And so in that meeting, everyone talked about their issues and if they've done anything with their particular property and what they did. So we got that sort of updated, and I'll send out some notes. I have to get it back to everyone in the meeting. Elena Hansel came from Soil and Water for ideas and potentially, just sort of issues, ideas, whatever. And Robbie Hess came from the county, because of course the street endings are county. So we talked through that, and what we talked about is there are dollars from the Army Corps of Engineers and other sources to help mitigate these kinds of issues. If they want to do this as a larger group, what would that mean? And the first piece that Elena brought up is what's your tolerance as to how much can you take from Mother Nature, and how much do you feel you need to keep as it is. And that this, probably one of the first things we learned right away is that break walls are not effective, and also rock because it sinks. So we're going to think through that, which then we brought up, just, this is all thinking. What we know on the inner side of this harbor, and I won't say the words right for the
sheet piling wall.
Thank you.
Wait, the what?
Exactly.
Piling?
Sheet piling. So the metal looks corrugated inside on the old Coast Guard Point parking lot between the harbor and the
Oh,
parking
yeah,
lot.
okay.
So that's been something that's been sitting there needing attention for quite some time, and I think you mentioned some other potential issues, and then some of the harbor master plan may have harbor-related parts to it. So then we just thought, does this mean something bigger to try to address everything that might be done when you go out and put a project together and you look for funding? How big do you make this project? So that's where that meeting ended. So we'll get out some notes. Elena had some materials that people could read to better understand what potential solutions are and just where all that lands. Robbie was looking into some funding, and this would be the same deal where you'd go out and look for funding to get someone to help you run a project like this, and you'd need to get a not landscape engineer, once again.
A coastal engineer?
Thank you. To survey and check everything as well. So there'd be some first steps, but it was the beginning of a conversation on that. And then, when getting back to this with the Historical Society, and they were at that meeting because they have some huge issues, so does Drury Lane. I mean, basically the rocks up to the buildings and beyond. And the same thing with East Bay. East Bay brought some great photos, aerial photos, just to show how bad it's gotten and relative to the work they've done. The only one with a happy face really was Scott at Best Western. He's happy with the work they've done there. But short of that, well, John,
Who didn't come.
Didn't
But
come.
yeah, he's happy with how it's going.
the house and the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
Chris,
the last storm I know East Bay got, or Best Western got all the sidewalks were covered right up to the buildings, and he said that's only happened, I think, once before. So, I mean, it was a pretty good substantial storm that we got.
They ended up doing some sandbagging on one corner of their building, and he
Yeah,
says
he
he's never
sand-
done that before.
Yeah, he sandbagged some stuff, but
That's his tolerance. Is
Yeah.
They can do that. Our tolerance is, for the properties that we manage on the East Bay, we're willing to run an excavator and a bobcat and a backhoe and a bunch of other things to remove beach cobble from the streets and sidewalks and property there and parking lot and put it back where it came from.
yeah.
And occasionally dig out our picnic tables that are at the top of the East Bay
Right.
break wall.
Yeah.
We just kind of know that's what we have to do.
and then Mike Raymond and Bruce Block basically board up their windows like every winter and keep them. Mike's, even though they're in there, they're boarded up all winter. So that's the first step on that, and we'll kind of see where it goes. So getting back to this one with the Historical Society, I don't know, but I wondered if we did put a bigger project together, would having any information that they put together add to a project and its relevancy and the ability to gain money to help fund it. I don't know that, but we did talk about that. Is that another way, the significance of all of this to our community historically, currently, economically, all this property is important not only to private landowners and their success, but our whole community. So does that lead to that? I don't know. So that's what I had this week. I think
Great.
that's everything then. All right, we're adjourned.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.